Hey everyone, this is Sally Eslin, and this is our very first episode of our revamped podcast series called Just Choose Life. And I'm very excited to pop my cherry with Ian Kingwill. So, welcome, Ian.
G'day, Sal. I'm first. Yay, it's
Yes,
me.
you are. And where are you zooming in from?
Oh, that's cheating, Sal. Bagara
Bagara. And where is that?
on the southern end of the Great Barrier Reef, about 4.5 hours north of Brisbane. Place called Paradise.
Place called Paradise. Absolutely. So this is a really amazing podcast, which is we're bringing people together and talking about your life, your journeys, and where you prioritize and put you first to choose life and focus on what really matters. So let's just get right into it, Ian. So whereabouts in your life did or experiences or stories that you can share with us about where you actually chose to put yourself first?
I think even when I was young, I chose to put myself first because I always wanted to do what I wanted to do.
Mm,
And I think that's a point that you make that decision and then you have a journey. And I guess when I think back to, I had a job and I worked in the Soil Conservation Service. And my kids were starting to get to that school age where we didn't want to get transferred again
mm,
and be moved somewhere else around the state. And I made a decision to go from a 35-hour a week job to a 90-hour job when I ran a news agency. But it was a decision that I made that was worthwhile. And that choice was to provide for your family, provide the opportunities for your family,
mm,
and then to be able to do what you want.
mm,
And sure, things don't always go that way.
mm,
Relationships don't last, all sorts of things. But I think, as I was saying to you beforehand, I love challenges and I've always enjoyed that challenge. I always challenge myself to be a better version of what I can be, what I was yesterday, and keep being that person. I'm a person that never wants to stop learning. When I stop learning, I think I'm in deep trouble. And no matter how old I am, I'll still have that attitude.
mm,
And I'm not young now, but I take the attitude that I am young. And you know how active I am.
mm.
I was even when I played sport, even when I played football, I was one of those silly people that actually enjoyed going to training. So I guess I had the simple outlook on life that everything is to be enjoyed.
Mm.
Yeah, you go to training and you hate being pushed and pushed and pushed
Yep.
and pushed, but you came away satisfied that you've given your best.
Mm,
And when you give your best, that makes for a better life in whatever you're trying to achieve. And whether it's going to work, going to your business, with your family, your kids, even like when we had our networking with you, I always push to have the best, strive to be the best, and set the example. So I think it's just ingrained in me because I come from a farming background. My dad worked on a farm. He got up early every day, worked the full hours till daylight to sunset to dark. His life was living on the land.
mm,
I never saw him go on a holiday. His holiday was to be on the land. Sure, he'd go and do things with mum and us as kids,
mm.
but he just loved the land. And you find what you love, and it's about being the person you are for what you want to be. I have my passions for various things, obviously AFL, but I love meeting people, and people make your life better. And like you've come into my life, a number of years ago.
That's
Uh,
scary.
yeah, yeah, as a friend, we've never physically met.
I know.
But I
No.
still class you as a friend, and people make your life. Yeah.
Well, you are known as a relationship developer, and and you are a people person. But an interesting point that you brought up, because often when I speak to people and it's about choosing life, it's about getting balance in. But you were saying one of the life choices that you made was to go from 35 hours to 90 hours, but that was a choice because it's helping the family. It was a situation at the time. So one of the Just Choose Life has this sort of mantra that says, just choose life, focus on what really matters and choose you. And you were focusing on what mattered, setting yourself up with the family, getting the finances all set up and getting that structure in, even though it was 90 hours a week. Most people would say, just choose life, need to work less, need more balance. But for you, like, talk us through, like, it would have been tough, but the goal was to financially be set up and support the family, or how did it work?
Well, I took on an opportunity and I thought, well, I can build it up. And I actually managed to double the turnover in a couple of years,
Whoa.
which was a lot of work. I made a few changes and things like that. I was open to ideas, but you talked about balance. I was still going to work and doing all those sort of things. I had two boys who were starting to get into sport and obviously everything else.
Mm,
And then I was still playing football. Yet I was still going to training and still playing senior football. And but I always made sure that I gave 1 day a week to the children, and that was every Sunday, and to my wife. And we always had that time, but we took responsibility for what we were doing. The kids knew what we were doing. We made sure that one of us went home every afternoon to spend time with the kids. My ex-wife was always there for the kids when they went before they went to school. And then one of us would go home in the afternoon to make sure when they came home we were there to support them. So you said balance, and it's finding that balance. You can work long hours, you can work whatever, but as long as you make sure you make the most of it, it
Mm,
can work.
mm,
And I think my kids grew up pretty well balanced kids. Sure, they had little issues like we all do with kids and stuff like that. They grew into good leaders in sport and in their schools, and they've got their own business and jobs and stuff like that.
mm.
And I think if you set the standard, you can set it for your children and everyone else, but you still have the principles of what you want. I'm very big on systems and formats, and you know how structured I am with calendars and things like that.
Very.
I guess even back then, I had my calendar. I didn't have it the same way I do now, but I knew exactly what I was doing all the time. And I had to be up at a certain hour to be there. I had to open, I had to close.
Yeah.
But I still took an interest in people then. As you said, relationship developer. I was always, people would come into the shop. I would always ask who they were, what their name was, what their interests were, get a little bit of a feeling about them, understand who they were. Yet I'd never been taught that. It was just instinctive in some way. And I think that helped me grow the business. When we sold the business, it felt like we'd got rid of our family because they were family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we should share with the listeners that it was a news agency business that you were running. So it was
Yes.
getting
Yeah.
up very early. And I think that stayed with you, getting up very early. You were the only person I know in the whole world that gets up so early. Do you want to share with the listeners what time your routine?
Yeah. Well, the news agency back then, just to give you a bit of a background, I used to open the shop at 4:30 in the morning. When I first took it over, it was 5 o'clock, but people kept on coming in the door, so I opened earlier. And then we were the only shop with Lotto that stayed open till 8 o'clock on a Monday night, things like that. And that's part of me. But now I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning,
I
somewhere
know.
between.
Don't.
And people might think that's the worst time of the day. It's actually one of the best times.
Yeah.
Don't have an alarm, get up, do my thing, do a bit of exercise, go for a walk and all those sort of things, listen to a podcast. I'm in my own world. It's my time.
Yeah,
It's my freedom.
that is
Yeah.
actually the most perfect time. 3 to 5 o'clock in the morning, energetically, is the most perfect time to be meditating. So that's your Zen time, and I get it. I went to Dr. Joe Dispenza's advanced retreat in Mexico years ago, and we did like 5 meditations a day. But one of them, or 2 days, we actually got up and did them from 3 o'clock onwards for 5 hours, and it's the perfect time to connect. So you're onto it, and you follow the energy too, Ian. So you're onto something without actually
But
knowing.
it's not something somebody taught me. It just
Hmm.
instinctively happened,
Yeah.
and it was natural for me for it to happen. I do it naturally without thinking about it. Doesn't matter where I am in the world, wherever I get to, I'll wake up early that next day. I just automatically adjust for some reason.
Yeah.
I can come back to Australia and straight away I'm back to normal. It's just I don't have no idea why, but it serves me well, and it always has served me well. And yeah, I'll keep doing it as long as I possibly and physically can. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, fast forward to today, because, this show is about just choosing life, but we all have different stages in our life. And so, fast forward to the big change that you had. Well, it's a couple of years ago now, isn't it? I want to
Yeah,
share.
when we moved up here, my wife wanted to move somewhere else in the country for various reasons, family reasons and things like that. We'd never been here. We came here to have a look. 3 weeks later, guess what? We owned a house. 5 weeks later, we lived here. But
Yeah.
it felt right when we came here. We looked at a number of other places they didn't feel right. But now Helen, with her Greek background, I often ask her, when does she want to help and go back home to see her family? I think she doesn't want to go back home. She loves it here.
Yeah.
And she's enjoying life now. She's found her own balance for herself. She does the things that she wants to do when she wants to do them. We go away when we want to go away. Talking about enjoying life. That's what it is, finding that place, finding the person you're comfortable with, the people you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I think one of the key takeaways that you've already brought up is that if it feels right, you follow that energy because you're going to enjoy life more. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what you've been doing, and you're a prime example of it. So, what do you think is the biggest issue you find people face when they're trying to combat change? It's when they're
Try
logging
looking for the
through this.
perfect answer.
Mm.
There is no perfect answer.
Yeah, it's good
I
truth.
think it's where you feel comfortable,
Yeah.
right? With the even with the people, some people come into your life and you just don't feel comfortable with them. So it's easier to move on than try and force the issue.
Mm.
Same in business, same in everyday life. If it doesn't feel right, move on. I've been in leadership roles in sport, for example, and at some stage I just knew it was time to close the door and move on because
Mhm.
I'd done my bit. I
Mm.
couldn't do any more. I could keep burning myself out. I've been in jobs, I've been in various roles, and I can remember one stage I parted ways with a company. I thought, wow, that's a weight being lifted off my shoulder.
Mm.
And I didn't have to put up with it anymore. So sometimes you've got to be bold and say no. One of the strongest words and one of the most powerful words can be no,
Yeah, it's so
because
true.
it's not right. Yeah.
Mm. And you've pointed out, brought up another really important thing is you've got to be bold, but have that courage and that confidence to make that choice to change and to actually put it into action, to say no and to say it's enough, it's time to move on. That's not easy. And
No.
you got any
Hey,
thoughts
it was
on
a big
how to do?
decision for us to move 15 hours north, never seen the place.
Yeah, crazy.
Now we couldn't be happier. We're Queenslanders now. You can't change us.
Banana bender.
Yes.
Yeah. But hang on, have you changed your footy teams?
No.
So some things stay the same. So just coming back onto that though, what would do you reckon, just 3 tips to help people shift their mindset into that, okay, I'm committing to change, I'm ready to do it, finding that courage and confidence, anything that you can share?
Probably the easiest way I can always say something is get all your ducks in a row, look at everything from the outside,
Yeah.
and make sure it feels right. If something doesn't seem right,
Yeah.
question it.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to question something. If you don't question, you're never going to have an answer. There's a great book out there called Questions Are the Answer, but that's to do with sales, but it applies to everything.
Yeah.
If you never ask the questions to find out something, you won't get the right answer.
Mm.
We've done things with the house and stuff like that, and just a simple little thing. How much for a cash discount? You'll be surprised the result you get, right? And if you don't ask the question, you don't get the answer. Yeah,
So
yeah.
true. It's so true. And the quality of the question gives you the quality of the answer as well. So
Yeah,
same
yeah.
sort of thing.
And be a good listener. Be a good listener is
Yes.
another really important thing. So if you're making a decision to do something, listen to what's going on around the situation or you're doing or what's coming up and the answers that are coming back. Yeah, like when we moved here, I'd spent 8 or 10 months, whatever, looking at everything demographically, financially with housing prices, climate, everything, till we felt where we found where the right place was. And as it turned out, it was better than we expected.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, and look at what happened. You moved in the perfect timing. Property's gone up like that. It's like,
Had nothing to do with that. It wasn't
yeah,
intentional for that reason. It was just to
I
find a
know.
place. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
amazing. But your 3 top tips are: look from the outside in, make sure it feels right, and be a really good listener. And
yeah.
and part of that is doing all the research. And I think the key thing here is just make sure it feels right, and that's what life's.
Sometimes you can do things spontaneously, and there's nothing wrong with that. And like we think back to our networking groups, and sometimes, yeah, we'll do that because it'll work. And
Yeah,
you've got a gut feel for various things.
yeah,
And that's from experience more so than anything.
yeah. Love.
And I still come back to even the things with business and stuff like that. The more questions I ask, the more answers I got, and the more I can make the right decision.
Mm,
And make sure you research it. And even when I go back to things that I did with sport, I asked questions and found out before I made the decision. When I built a business from a food shop in an industrial area, I asked questions, I did my research, make sure it felt right, looked right,
yeah,
make sure I could get the results. Now, even when I extended the hours in my news agency, I tested it before I made the decision. I just threw, you find out the things that are going to work. Yeah.
yeah.
Even to get rid of things, there's nothing wrong with that either.
That's a
Mm.
really important part, isn't it? Culling the things that you expiry date overdone, or just doesn't fit. Cull it. Things that
Yeah,
drain time and energy when they're not in alignment with who you are
yeah.
now. Mm.
But as I've said, I've been in various roles, and sometimes you reach that point and you say, I can't do any more. I'm
Mm.
going to bash my head against the wall. It's time to move on. It's like a relationship. Sometimes you've got a relationship and, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it may be. No, this is not going anywhere. I've got to move on for the betterment of me, my happiness, their happiness, so you can both enjoy life. And you'll find that right person at the right time, or you'll find your right place at the right time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just sitting in that center point of just, being in the present moment and not worrying about stuff tomorrow because it hasn't even happened, and not being drawn back into the past. Oh, it was so good when it was like that. But just being comfortable in the now and just, following that energy, if it feels right.
Well, I'll give you another, being in the right place, right time. Helen and I went away for the weekend. We didn't have our whole weekend planned, but guess what? We managed to fill it in with great things to do, and we enjoyed them just spontaneously because we saw something, thought, yeah, let's have a look at that. And we did, and it was a great time.
Yeah, fabulous. So ultimately, at the end of the day, what does choosing life mean to you?
Being who you are,
Yeah,
doing what you want.
yeah, being who you are and doing what you want. Love that.
Yeah, because I am who I am. I'm never going to change. You know who I am.
It's true. You're unique, and especially for a bloke, you're very in tune. Do you know what I mean? Like you
I
live
think I've learned to listen over time,
yeah,
right? I've made mistakes in many areas. I admit that, I acknowledge that. I can own up to it. I mean, it's
yeah.
simple. It doesn't, yeah, the world doesn't care. I heard this podcast a couple of weeks ago. The world doesn't care, right? You're in your own world. You've only got to look after yourself.
Mm,
You might be complaining about everything, but really, the world doesn't care. They're going to go and worry about themselves. They're the only person they've got to worry about. Sure, they'll support you, family will support you, but they've got their own world to look after. You've got to make your own decisions for what you do. And if you don't make them for the right reason, guess what? Guess the world still doesn't care,
mm.
right? Unless you're going to affect everybody, then they do care. But if you've got to worry about what you've got to do, that's all you've got to worry about.
That's just the perfect way to finish off on this podcast, because this is all about choosing you, focusing on what really matters, and choosing life at the end of the day. Because as you said, the world doesn't care really at the end of the day. And so, this is your life, your journey, and you're in the driver's seat of it. So, just be like Ian. Just
Nobody can be like Ian.
we're all perfectly imperfect, warts and all. And it's just
That's right.
we've
Yeah.
got to be more forgiving on ourselves and more compassionate on ourselves. I mean, gosh, we all muck up, but that's how we learn.
And
But
I'll finish with one final little quote. How I am every single day. My eyes are open. I'm sensational.
I love that your eyes are open. You're sensational. Well,
Hey, you could be in worse places, couldn't you?
exactly right. And you're up in sunny Queensland. Lucky you. So, Ian Kingwill, thank you so much for being my very first guest on Just Choose Life. It's exciting, and you are living life up to the fullest, and you're very inspirational. So that's what it's all about, inspiring people to empower themselves to just choose life and put themselves first and just focus on what matters, because we're not here for a long time. So let's make it a good time. So, Ian, thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of my heart.
And thanks, Sal. I've really enjoyed it. And I'm glad I was your first. Thank you.
Takes you back, doesn't it?
No comment.
See you later. Bye.